I'm live. Hello, hello. Let's see. Let's see if we can. Let's see if we can make. Let's see if we can make it so you can comment on this live, if I'm live. I don't use StreamYard very often. I'm learning all different sorts of platforms to go live on. I used to use StreamYard a lot. And now I'm just trying to make it so I can see your guys' comments. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, so let me see if I can see your comments. If anybody can see me live, please let me know. Let me know if you can see me live. Someone can see me. Hello, Miss Athena. Oh, awesome. Okay. Thank you, darling. Awesome. Cool. So I have two the two locations that I'm streaming to. I can see me and hear me. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this live stream. Thanks for being patient with me as I navigate this platform. Like I said, I used to use StreamYard. I haven't so much lately. It's a really great platform to be able to stream to multiple locations. So I'm happy this is working. Let's get started. So I wanted to do this little bit of a masterclass today, sort of a last minute masterclass, to share with you all how the Quadrant Theory has fundamentally shifted the relationships in my life. Now, the Quadrant Theory does all sorts of things, affects every single area of your life. But one area that's really been impacted, like I said, is the relationships. And since everything in our life is about relationships, meaning the relationship with ourselves, the relationship with the people around us, I mean, that's really what our life is made up of. I thought this was profoundly important to share how this can help you with the relationships in your life and how it can really help heal and transform. And that doesn't have to mean that your relationship is bad. So what I'm going to share with you is the relationship with my husband is amazing. It always has been from the very beginning. We met on our own journeys when we were already doing a lot of internal work on ourselves. And so that's how we were able really to attract each other, is because we were doing a lot of inner work. And so our relationship has never been bad at all, ever. But it went deeper than I thought that it could. And I think that's the beauty of being in really conscious relationships in your life, is that when you both show up very consciously and you learn how to communicate properly, the depths that you can go with each other is really profound. Even when you think that you can't go any deeper, even when you think you have a really great relationship, there's always possibility to deepen that even more. And that is what I have found specifically with my husband, is that over the last 7 years, the relationship has just deepened in ways that I didn't even think was possible. And one aspect, especially when it came to my understanding of him and his understanding of me, sort of in two areas, what sort of drives him, what gives him meaning, what gives him purpose. Understanding that was huge for us, but then also understanding how to communicate when one of us is having issues or struggling with something. And I could just copy and paste that over to the relationship with my daughter, which I'm going to share about, but also the relationship with myself, because how I interact and communicate with my loved ones, guess what? That's exactly how I'm going to interact and communicate with myself. It's just an outward reflection of how I talk to myself and how I treat myself. And so when you do the work on improving and deepening those relationships in your life outwardly, it's going to be a reflection of doing that work inwardly as well. And you're going to learn that if I can communicate in a very compassionate and loving way with myself, I'm going to be more willing to do that with the people that I love. So I'm going to dive into a slideshow with you guys to give you a frame of reference for first what the quadrant theory is and set you up with the framework so you understand what it is. But then I'm going to dive into how exactly to apply that framework within the relationships in your life in a couple different ways, like I said. So not just helping you to understand them better and what drives them and why they may not be doing what you think that they should be doing, the loved ones in your life. It will help you understand that better. But then also, like I said, when you're in communication with that person, and even with yourself, when you're in communication with yourself, how to hold almost two different perspectives within yourself when you yourself are working through something. So I'm going to dive into this slideshow with you guys. So like I said, I can give you a frame of reference and then I can walk you through how I actually did this in my life. So we are going to share screen. Okay, so let's see. We're going to share this. Cool. Awesome. So hopefully sharing this, hopefully you guys can see this. Cool. Okay. So transforming your relationships with the quadrant theory. So what I'm going to cover in this it's a short slideshow, but basically we're going to cover the quadrant theory, but how we use that to uncover your own gifts and lessons. And this is going to directly play into how this affects your relationships, but then also the improving your overall sense of peace, sense of balance, sense of purpose. And then we're going to cover a breakdown of the model to understand what these quadrants are. So if you are tuning into this live, I know obviously some of you on here have done lots of work with us, but some of you may be tuning in and you don't know anything about me or my husband or our company, The Art of Looking In. So I just want to give you a very quick background. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I've got lots of other webinars you can watch where we dive really deep into the background of The Art of Looking In. But basically our mission, ultimately, very simply, is to help people remember who they are. And we offer different tools, we offer different resources, we offer classes, courses, in-person experiences to help you become a happier, healthier, healed, and more whole human being so that you can live with more purpose and meaning. And we've been doing this for about 6 years, almost 7 years. Our model of dissemination, meaning how we walk people through different processes, has changed and evolved over the last 6 years. You know, we worked with our best friend for a while in the coaching business, and then we all went on our own separate ways for a while. So I was doing my own coaching, and then my husband and I came back together. And about 1.5 years ago, you know, we sort of reframed everything, remodeled our business model into The Art of Looking In, where we're more focused now on really meeting people where they're at in their journey of personal growth and spiritual awakening, so that, you know, you may be someone that's brand new into this space, into the self-help space. And so we have tools and resources for you to help you at that stage, but then all the way up to people who've been at this for a while and they're really looking to deepen their level of mastery in their life. So like actually becoming the master of your reality. And so that was really the biggest part of our mission, was to meet people where they're at, offer tools for where you're at from the very beginning, all the way up to people who really want to go all in and are completely devoted and committed to their own mission and their life. And so ultimately, like I said, to keep it very simply, we are interested in helping people remember who they really are, not the conditioning, not the beliefs, not the ego, not the persona, not the identity, but who they are after you take all of that away, and really learning how to live and integrate from that place. Our background is my husband and I met at a Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat, and we started our company in our mission and helping people because we saw so many people having very profound experiences, but then not being able to do the most important thing, which is integration. And so you need retreats and workshops. It's why we offer them ourselves, in order to get people out of their normal every single day environment, and so that they can have an opportunity to really change and transform and have profound experiences. And you have to be able to have tools and resources to integrate those experiences into your life, so that workshops and retreats, that they don't just become some other source of addiction or some source of trying to avoid life. Really, what we want to help you do is move deeper into life, but integrate that sense of who you really are into that, so you're living from that space all of the time. And so that's really our mission and focus at the Art of Looking In. And so enough about us. Let's talk about why you may be here. And as I said, we are passionate about meeting people where they are in their spiritual awakening journey, in their personal development, self-help journey. And so you may be a person that I described at the beginning who's fairly new to this world and this space. That was me about 9 years ago, maybe. And I was living a life that pretty much everyone told me that I should be. I was married, had kids, had a good job, had a side business. And yet I was still really unhappy. I felt very unfulfilled. I felt angry. I felt resentful. I felt like something was definitely missing in my life. I knew that there was more to what I should be doing in my life. I knew that innately and deeply in me, but I didn't know what that looked like. And I didn't know what to do about that. More importantly, it was like, okay, I know this, but what do I do with it? So that may be you, and you're looking to uncover what that really is and break free from that old conditioning and start to explore, who are you really? What are you here for? What is a life that is lived authentically mean to you? And what does that look like? And so I think you'll definitely get a lot of value from this conversation today. Or you may be somebody that's been on the journey for a little bit. So you know a lot of self-help, spiritual wordage and concepts. You've had some kind of awakening already. You've tried different modalities, and you've gone to some workshops or different things like that. You've hired some guides or mentors. You've had different modalities, experienced different modalities, but you're really just looking to expand even deeper. And you may be somebody that's had an awakening, and you're starting to integrate some of it into your life, but maybe your relationship is struggling. Maybe you're asking yourself, am I supposed to be in this relationship? Is this relationship meant for me? This is totally normal part of the journey and the process. And if that's you, you will definitely get a lot of value out of today. Or maybe you are sort of, like I said, leaning more towards, you're interested now in mastery. So you've been able to change your life in some ways. You've integrated some of this in some ways, but you really want to go deeper into, like, how do I truly become the master of my life? How do I serve from a very deep place? How do I add to the collective? So instead of just focused on you now, you're focused more on a larger vision. But again, you might be struggling with those close relationships in your life. And as I said in the beginning, maybe you're not even struggling with them. You're just looking to create some depth there. Maybe you already have a really good foundation, but you're looking to go deeper, especially if you're a parent and you struggle at all with the relationship with your children. You're going to get a ton of value from today. If you are a parent, even if you don't struggle with the relationship, if you are a parent, please stay as long as you can on this webinar, because I promise you're going to get a lot of value in helping you understand your child at a much deeper level, and helping you communicate with them and helping you connect with them. So I want to quickly go over the quadrant theory. As I said, there's, a vast array of people that are joining this. Some people, this may be your first time. You may be hearing the quadrant theory for the first time. Some of you may have done our quadrant theory class already. But you're going to get, every single time you listen to something, even if you've heard it a million times, you're going to get something new from it, because every time you listen to it, you're a different person and you have a different perspective. Oh, hopefully that didn't, can everyone still see me? Let's make sure. Can everyone still see me? If someone can comment and say, I can still see you, and I can see I can see you. Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, let's go back to this. Awesome. Okay, so you're going to learn something new every single time you hear about the quadrant theory. The quadrant theory is layered. So at a very basic level, which is what I'm going to give you guys today, I'm going to give you like a very basic framework and outline for what the quadrant theory is based in. However, the quadrant theory goes very, very, very deep, and it goes into layers. So what we're focusing on today is more of a beginning layer. Obviously, I'm going to share with you, if you're interested in going deeper, ways that you can do that with us. I'll share that with you today, because as I said, there is deep layers to this quadrant theory, and it can meet you where you're at as well. And like I said, if what I go over today resonates with you, I'm going to give you options to take it deeper. But for purposes of time and everything else, I'm just going to give you a very basic framework for what the quadrant theory is today. My husband and I created this signature framework we use to help you not only uncover your purpose and your gifts, because I know that's really big for people. It's like, what is my purpose? What are my gifts? What are my lessons I'm here to learn? But also how to create overall balance and inner peace in the process, so that you're not swinging from really high highs to low lows, which is a very, again, normal part of the process when you begin a spiritual awakening journey or a self-help journey. It can be very normal to swing to these different areas of our life. In fact, that is what helped us create the quadrant theory, is because we saw these patterns, not only in ourselves, but in people that we were coaching and guiding, hundreds of people. We would see these patterns, and we would see these really extremes that would happen in their journey. And like I said, I saw it in our life. And that is really what helped us to develop this and to understand why people were going through these extremes in their journey. So it really helps you to create balance. You're not swinging. And so you're not swinging without understanding what's happening. So it's really like a roadmap, but it's your own personal roadmap. So everybody that we coach through this process, they create their own personalized self-awareness map. They literally create a map for themselves to help them understand themselves better, to know thyself better. And once you know the self better, obviously that's how you become a master of your reality, because your reality is your perceptions, and everything that you perceive is what you're going to experience. So we break this down and we use the model of the 4 quadrants of the brain, what they're responsible for actually biologically and chemically in your body, because you're going to experience different chemicals, which means you're going to experience different emotions and different thoughts. You're going to behave differently when operating from each of these quadrants, and then how you can really create balance between all 4 of them. So you're utilizing all of them. And instead of going from one extreme to the other, being in the shadow of one quadrant, being stuck in the shadow, this is really a path and a map to help you navigate between all 4. So you really can experience more emotional regulation, balance, harmony, and inner peace. And so some of the other benefits that you're going to experience when learning how to apply the quadrant theory framework into your life is obviously improved relationships. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You're going to know how to have way more productivity in your work. This is something that has been massive for me. And obviously I'm an entrepreneur and business owner. And so part of this process has allowed me to do almost more with less effort. And so I'm not getting burnt out, not getting stressed out. I'm not getting tired, because I've learned how to cycle through these quadrants. And so that I can be very effective, even more than productive. I can be effective with actually doing less. If you are somebody that's really driven, that's huge, right? Because you can go to burnout really easily, as I did. Definitely a deeper spiritual connection, living more from meaning and purpose. You're going to experience increased states of creativity and flow, more self-acceptance and self-love, which is what I'll be talking about today as well, less self-judgment, and a deeper connection to your own inner intuition, guidance, and wisdom. And so, like I said, we're going to dive into how this works. So basically, like I said, at a very simplistic level, the quadrant theory is breaking the brain up into 4 sections, into 4 quadrants. And if you think of quadrant 1, it's the thinking left, upper thinking left hemisphere. So this is the part of you that's actually the ego. It's the identity. So I always think of like Tony Robbins is a really good example of when you're activated in your quadrant 1 and you're utilizing this part of your brain. You're like the let's go get it. You're the warrior. You're the leader. So there's, lots of leaders that are able to really activate their quadrant 1, but it's also the earth element. So it's the material world, right? Which is the world of the ego, the analyzer. So because it's the mental plane, you're more of a thinker, and you're able to use logic and reason. Now, if you're not activated at all in your quadrant 2 and you're purely in your quadrant 1, there's no emotion attached. So it's just purely of the mental plane, thought, analyzation, logic and reason, things like that. And if we jump down, so we're still on the left side of the brain, but we're in the limbic system, basically, of the left side of the brain. This is what we call quadrant 2. And this is, like I said, the limbic system in your brain. And this is where really memories are stored. So you can think of this as like your subconscious beliefs, or also your inner child. So people say, well, inner child work isn't important. Well, that's all great and all, but this actually is biologically a part of your brain, and that never ages. So you actually do have an inner child living inside your brain, and that inner child never ages. Now you can change the meaning that that inner child gives to things. And that's when we say we work on subconscious beliefs, when we're working with, how to reprogram and reimprint your brain. That is done in quadrant 2. That is working with the inner child. But also this is where your intuition lives too. So my husband always says children are the closest to God because they haven't had all the conditioning that adults have had. So if you think of where you're able to access your intuition, well, you're able to access it when you're a young child because you're still close to that connection. Have all these experiences and trauma and things that have happened to you. So that's really where your intuition lives as well. So you can think of like the inner child, the memories, the meaning, the intuition. The thing is, in the shadow, it can also be where the victim part of you. Why? Because when you were a child and you had trauma, you were a victim. So that's why sometimes when we operate from quadrant 2, we can get into that victim state because you were a victim when you were a child. And that could just mean like a victim to circumstances. Like you didn't get to decide when you ate. You didn't get to decide when you wanted to play, rightfully so, right? You didn't have the wisdom of an adult. But as a child, that means you became a victim to others around you, right? So it's really important we make that distinction, especially in the spiritual community, in the self-help community that wants to sort of spiritually bypass over all of this stuff and go, well, I'm not a victim in my life. Well, you're not now, but sometimes if your brain is activated in quadrant 2, that's why that can come up. So it's important we have some compassion and understanding around that aspect of ourselves, which is what I'll get into today. But most importantly, this is the emotional part of your brain, the feeling part of your brain, okay? This is the feminine, where quadrant 1 is the masculine, okay? Then we hop over to quadrant 3, which is also the limbic system in our brain. It's the emotional aspect, but the difference between the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of the limbic system is the left hemisphere, quadrant 2, lives in the past. In the limbic system, in the right side of the brain, you are in the present. So it's still the child aspect of you, but it's the present child aspect of you. So imagine a child that has no memory. Imagine a playful child that's just totally present in the moment and having fun, right? They don't have any wisdom from their quadrant 4 or their quadrant 1 yet. So they can be very fire. In fact, it's the fire element, but they're the part of you that can just go dance in front of a bunch of people and don't care, or wants to go on an adventure and excitement. You don't really want responsibility because you're not interested in that. You're interested in the present and having fun and being very playful. However, again, like all the other quadrants, there's a shadow to this. But again, you can think of this as just the emotional, very heart-centered, very loving, very playful, very community-oriented, unconditional love. This is the emotional feeling present aspect of you. And then lastly, if we jump up to quadrant 4, which is the right upper hemisphere of the brain, this is again in the mental plane, the thinking right hemisphere. This is the very wise universal consciousness in you. So it's like your own sage. I said owl or Yoda or just that part of you that is connected with everyone and everything. There is no separation, right? You see from the highest perspective. You see the unity in every single thing. So that basically gives you a quick overview of what the quadrant theory is. At its very basic level, that is the quadrant theory broken down. And then, like I said, we take this into different layers and different depths into how this actually affects our lives. So what we do in the quadrant theory in our immersive class is go even deeper into those things. So those are like a broad understanding. What we did was we took different models, different frameworks, different modalities that we had learned over the past 8 years in our own journey, and we were actually able to map them within each of these 4 quadrants, meaning all of these models of ways to create different things in your life around personal growth or spiritual development all could be mapped under each of these quadrants. In other words, they all could describe how to move through these quadrants and a deeper understanding of what these quadrants are responsible for. So if we take it one step deeper, we look at quadrant 1. Like I said, it's like the masculine. It's a very narrow focus. This is the struggle phase of the flow cycle, which is one of the models that we use. We also apply Jungian psychology, and so this is of the 12 archetypes and 4 main, and then 12 sub. This is the persona, so it's the by me level of consciousness. It's the earth element. It's also the astrological signs of Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, and it is the spring element. So we were able to take those things and map them between all 4 of these quadrants. So we took the open focus method, which is 4 different ways of paying attention. We took the flow cycle. We took Jungian psychology. We took the 4 levels of consciousness. We took the 12 astrological signs and the elements and the seasons, and we were able to map them, like I said, to give you an even deeper understanding of what it feels like and what these different quadrants are responsible for, but then also how to navigate between them. So you can think of the left side of the brain as the material world. So that's the person that you are, that you're sitting here watching this right now. The identity that's watching this, that's the material world. So that is all going to take place in the left hemisphere of your brain, sort of like the doing, the future and the past, empathy, being able to empathize with other people and connect with other people, relationships, which is what we're going to dive into. And then the right side, you can really think of the spiritual world. So more of the spiritual self. And really the other aspect of what we're very passionate about here at the Art of Looking In is marrying these 2 worlds, the science and the spirituality, because for us, it's really a coming together of all 4 quadrants of our brain and creating a new world based on this new model. And so that you're utilizing the material world, but you're letting the spiritual world be completely in balance with that, as opposed to our culture for the last hundreds of years, where it's really been dominant in the material world and lost all sense of spirituality. What we want to do is bring those back all online, and so that we're operating equally from both. And that's really how we believe a new world, or whatever you want to call it, a new level of collective consciousness is going to be birthed, is by marrying those 2, as opposed to getting stuck in one or the other, or saying one's better than the other, or one doesn't get it. It's really bringing them, bridging them together and living from a whole, using all of our brain, using all the technology and tools and software that we were given to navigate in a 3-dimensional world, is being able to utilize all of them. And really, like I said, a big part of why we developed this is because we saw a lot of patterns when people embarked onto a spiritual journey. They would go into, maybe they operated from 1 and 2 a lot, and then they would go to like these retreats or these seminars, or they take these classes, or they would work with somebody, and they would go way into quadrant 3 or way into quadrant 4. And of course, it felt so amazing that they didn't want to have anything to do with quadrant 1 and 2. They didn't want to have anything to do with relationships, with jobs, with like moving in a 3-dimensional world. In fact, to the point where they thought they were better than, and it can form a spiritual ego. I went through this process. I went through growing a spiritual ego unbeknownst to me, and then having some very humbling experiences where I saw that. And then learning how to actually integrate all 4 pieces of this, and understanding that all 4 pieces are necessary. One is not better than the other. The most important thing is balance between all 4 of them, that they're all necessary. So our ego is a necessary part of our human experience. You can't experience the 3-dimensional world without it. We use things like money in our world. We use things like building. We use all of these materialistic things to navigate a three-dimensional world. The only problem is we've navigated it only from an ego perspective and from our wounds, our inner child wounds as a collective, as opposed to navigating it from our spiritual side and using our spiritual side to infuse that aspect of us. And so that when we're creating in the material world, we're doing it from a place of spiritual connection as opposed to just our own egos, right? So it's really understanding how to balance all of these quadrants and not get so stuck in one or the other. You can get stuck in the shadow work too, which is quadrant 2. Even if you're on a spiritual path, we saw this a lot too. People will go down like, I need to heal, I need to heal, I need to heal, I need to heal. And then they can't ever get out of the I need to heal phase, right? And they would get stuck in that, or they would even get stuck in quadrant 3, which is play. I was there. It was like, I didn't want any responsibility. I didn't want relationship. Like, I just wanted to play and have fun. I didn't want to have to do the drudgery of like real life stuff. And until again, I had some very humbling experiences and I realized that everything I do can be spiritual. Doing the dishes can be spiritual. Doing laundry can be spiritual. Like, it's up to me to bring that essence into everything that I do. And so that I'm not avoiding any parts of my life. I'm actually moving deeper into all parts of my life. And that's what the Quadrant Theory has done for me. So as I said, at the very basic level, what you're doing is understanding how do each of these quadrants work? Who am I when I'm activated, I'm balanced, and I'm imbalanced in each of these quadrants? So what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing when I'm overactive in my quadrant 1, right? When I go into burnout, I'm just doing and I'm not surrendering and I'm not trusting. So it's the basic level is what we do in our immersive course is help you to create your own personalized map. So you can understand in each of these quadrants, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? How am I behaving when I'm balanced and when I'm imbalanced in each of these quadrants? And then I can start to introduce sustainable activities that keep me in that balance. If you're going to work and you're an entrepreneur or a business owner and all your focus and attention is going on work all day, every day, you're not doing anything to activate your quadrant 3 and 4, then no wonder you're going to get to burnout. You're going to feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders because you aren't connected with something bigger than you, because you're stuck in your quadrant 1, you're stuck in the ego, right? And so really, another aspect is sustainable. Because when a lot of people want to create some sort of change or transformation in their life, they're like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week. No, you're not. You're not. And then what's going to happen is you're going to betray yourself. You're not going to follow through. Then you're going to go, yeah, I'm never going to change. Everything's always going to be the same. So with this model, after many different courses and classes and retreats that we've led and helped hundreds of people through, what we found is that small and sustainable is actually the most lasting. So if you can pick one activity from each quadrant and introduce that into your daily activities, it's enough. This has been a huge part of my own journey as somebody that can be an overachiever and really driven and motivated, is that if I can just stick to one thing out of each of those categories every day, it's going to eventually create sustainable balance. And what happens is I end up doing all of them and a lot of times even more. But because I did that one, I didn't betray myself. I did what I actually said I was going to do for myself, right? And then it's easier to continue to do that in all areas of my life. And then really understanding, oh my gosh, if I know how I act, think, and feel when I'm imbalanced in a quadrant, then I also can have different and specific activities to help me move out of that quadrant, okay? So this is, like I said, dealing at the very basic sort of human aspect of the quadrant. So I'm going to quickly go over some activities and exercises to help you add to your, these are just some that I use. There's many, many, many more. We go deep into those in our immersive class is, tons of different activities that you can utilize. They have to resonate with you. That's the most important thing. But here are just some examples if you were to create your own map. So some things you can do to activate your quadrant 1. Let's say you're just feeling like you're going in circles and you're, quadrant 3, because it's the feminine and it's playful, you can think of it as a circle, and you can think of quadrant 1 as a straight line. That's the masculine and the feminine, right? If you find yourself in that circle and you're like, but I'm not making any forward motion and I'm sort of stuck in that, Then, okay, maybe it's time to activate some more characteristics and qualities of your quadrant 1. So some ways you can do this is daily solar plexus breath work. I have this on our YouTube channel. This is something that you can do daily. It's 15 minutes. Because quadrant 1, you can think of as your solar plexus. So your place of discipline, your place of will, your place of personal power. That is the ego, right? The ego lives in your solar plexus. And so doing breath work every day, specifically breath work, not just meditation, but specifically breath work, because breath work is going to work in your body and it's going to work in that solar plexus. So if you introduce that into your daily life, especially when you know you need some of the quadrant 1 characteristics, that is a great way to start utilizing that energy. Organization. So anytime you organize anything, you're activated in your quadrant 1. So maybe organizing your bedroom, organizing your office, your kitchen, and basically anything will help activate this quadrant 1. Anytime you're creating discomfort, because, like I said, Tony Robbins, right? Quadrant 1, that place where you're the warrior, right? The warrior moves towards discomfort instead of away from it. It's really about courage. And then any kind of leadership skills building. So if you listen to something on YouTube or take a class on how you can become a better leader, leadership is a classic characteristic of quadrant 1. You want to tap into your leadership skills, you're going to have to tap into your quadrant 1. Some other things that you can do is working on finance, help money and wealth live in finances, live in quadrant 1, cleaning, any inspirational videos, ice bath, and then anytime you work with the earth element, because the earth element is quadrant 1. And then quadrant 2 is recovery and rest. So getting lots of sleep. This is like think about like totally nurturing yourself when you need to go in quadrant 2. So say you've been pushing a lot, or maybe even, this is really normal after you have really high highs, because quadrant 4 is in the flow state. You're going to drop down into quadrant 2. And so you can think of this as like the winter. This is the winter season. So you're just really going within. It's the feminine, right? So you're nurturing, you're sitting with emotions. It's a circle. So it's not going outwards, it's going inwards, and allowing yourself the space and time to just rest and recover. So doing things like getting a massage, eating really healthy food, taking naps, working with your triggers, because this is a quadrant of healing. And then it's the water element. So working with the water element. And then quadrant 3 is going to be more physical activities. It's going to be, like I said, more playful, present. So anything like dance, yoga, walking in nature, gardening, also skiing for me is a huge quadrant 3 activation, puzzles, basically spontaneous adventure. This is the fire element. So think of anything that you can do that you're not thinking about, right? So it's just something that you can be very playful and present with. A lot of times it is sort of the physical aspect, because you're trying to get out of your brain and more into your body and into your subconscious mind and into the present. And typically that's going to be something that's physical. It doesn't always have to be, but it mostly is. And then lastly, quadrant 4, quadrant 4 is the flow state. Quadrant 4 is universal consciousness. So what I want to make clear is that you can do things to trigger this, but it's really hard to consciously trigger it. You want to set up the conditions to move into quadrant 4. And so setting up the conditions means no distractions. So putting yourself in an environment where you don't have any distractions around you. And then you can do things like meditation, which will activate this flow state or universal consciousness connection. This also happens when writing. You can do breath work to reach these altered states of consciousness. But you can think of the flow state as it's an immersive style of paying attention. So you're totally immersed. You lose all sense of the self. So think of it when you've gone into deep meditation, or if you're a writer or an artist or a builder, it's when you get into those states where you disappear and you're totally in flow. It's as if something's coming through you. I know so many people that, I consider myself a writer. I love writing. I love it because I can get into these flow states, but I've heard other people talk about this. They write something when they're in their quadrant 4, when they're in a flow state. And then afterwards they read it and they're like, oh my gosh, like, I don't even know where that came from. Classic signal that you were activated in your quadrant 4. So setting up the conditions to do this is really important. And that's sort of the deeper aspect of level 2 is now we're going to go into level 2. So understanding what your natural born quadrant is. Okay. This is where I'm really going to dive into how this has affected my relationships. Okay. So what I want to tell you is very quickly, to give you a background, as we were developing this quadrant theory, we took a class through it. We were developing each week. And every time I would go into meditation, it was as if I was in my own classroom, like something was teaching me and giving the quadrant theory to me as sort of a steward to then, offer to other people. And so I'd have these really profound meditations where I was almost getting like answers to questions that I had. And I had a specific meditation one day because I was working a lot internally on my sense of value, like, what value I had to offer people, what value I had just in general. And so I was really uncovering some deep beliefs I had around this. And I've always felt like I wanted to figure out my purpose. And I know I'm not alone in this. I know a lot of you out there are too. It's like, I need to figure out my purpose. And not really knowing for sure, or if I was on, purpose, but I always knew some things about myself. So when I went into this meditation, it was like, again, I was in a classroom and it was sort of teaching me some things. And one of that was, it had me look at the common themes in my life, meaning what were the things that people had told me my whole life that I actually really felt were true. So it's not like someone would say something to me and I didn't know if I necessarily believed it. But what were the things I actually believed were true? Well, people had told me my whole life that I was very wise, that I was, wise beyond my years. I was an old soul. Like, people always naturally came to me to seek guidance and help, even as a young person. And I'd always been fascinated with sort of humans. I'd always looked at them as if I wasn't one. I really always felt that way. I felt like I wasn't really a human. And I think that's why they fascinated me so much, because I was like, wow, how did they work? How does the psyche work? How does the emotions work? And because of my childhood, I sort of had to figure that out too. My dad was very emotional, and, God love him. We have an amazing relationship now. In my childhood, he was, it was like walking on eggshells. So he had a pretty extreme temper. And so I had to figure out sort of how to do things to make him and others around me happy. And so I was always fascinated with the human psyche. And so I knew that was one aspect that I always knew I really wanted to help people in some way. In fact, my teenage years, I went through a lot of trauma, suicide attempts, sent down to Mexico for 10 months in a teen recovery center. And so I went through a lot of trauma in my teens. And because of that, I knew I always wanted to help people through these things. And so I was going to go to school for psychology and open up my own practice. Ended up going to school for social work instead, had a spiritual awakening, and then everything shifted in how I help people. But these were the themes that I saw in my life. And all of a sudden they showed me that was my purpose. My purpose was to activate my gifts. And my gifts would be from my quadrant. And what quadrant represented wisdom and a desire to help everyone. And it was quadrant 4. Of course, Aquarius was associated with the air element, and the air element is quadrant 4. And so it was as if they were showing me like a slideshow, like I'm showing you, and told me very specifically, your only purpose as a human, why we have the human experience, is number one, to learn, grow, and evolve as a soul. If we are all come from source, one thing, and source split itself up into multiple perspectives to learn more about itself, then we need time and space in order to do that. We need a human experience in order to do that. If you don't have time and space, you don't have growth. Growth requires time. And so the human experience is created so that we can learn and grow and evolve as a soul and eventually go back to source. And in that process, we come in with certain gifts and certain lifetimes. And so our only purpose is to offer the purpose is to learn and grow. If you do nothing in your life but that, you're living in your purpose. So just for those of you that like get obsessed with it, let me give you some relief and tell you that your only purpose is to grow and evolve as a soul. You don't have to do anything except for that. And that is all of our purposes. And in that, we come into each incarnation with specific gifts that we can offer the collective, that we can offer the entire human experience to also improve the human experience. And with that, because we live in a dualistic environment, the human experience is dual, meaning man, woman, plus, minus, dark, light, everything that we experience in the human experience is duality. And so because we come in with gifts, on the other end of that pole is we also come in with specific lessons to learn so that our soul can evolve continuously with each lifetime. And they showed me basically a map like I'm showing you of these two polarities that exist. And if I'm in quadrant 1 and my gifts come, or quadrant 4, my gifts come from quadrant 4, then my lessons would be on the other end of that pole, which made complete sense to me in my own life because I really avoided emotions. I was scared of the dark. You could think of winter as dark, as night, as quadrant 2. I really was terrified of emotions because growing up, I had a dad that is a natural born quadrant 2. So he's very emotional. And so emotions scared me. And I am a problem solver. I'm of the mental plane. I want to fix, I want to find solutions to fix problems. It's a very masculine oriented. And I could see a broader perspective on things. And so I didn't understand the sort of victimization that can happen in quadrant 2. So for me, spiritually bypassing was very easy for me as a natural born quadrant 4. And so my lesson and the journey that I had been on for about 2 years really was happening down in quadrant 2, unbeknownst to me. I didn't know the quadrant theory until they told me all of this in a meditation, but it made perfect sense in my own life and then seeing others. And so what I came to understand is that we all have a natural born quadrant. We all have gifts. Now, what does this mean? It doesn't mean that these gifts are things that you have to do as a profession. You don't have to do that. What you have to do is offer these gifts to the world. So that took accepting them, right? Because one of my traumas or shadows was that I was different from everybody else. And that meant I wouldn't be loved. And that meant I wouldn't be safe. And so I had to really embrace and accept my gifts, that I am a little quirky and weird and different, and wave my freak flag as quadrant 4s are. And I had to accept that and embrace that so that I could then offer my gifts to the world and I could be in purpose and in alignment. And so I tell all of you this because when you are doing things that are in alignment with your natural born quadrant, you will feel the resonance of that. You will feel like, oh, I'm alive. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. You will feel alive when you're activated in your gifts and you're offering them to people. It's like life force energy moves through you. So you will know these. These are the things that will come natural to you. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't learn the other quadrants and you learn the other gifts. That's part of the quadrant theory as we dive deeper into it, is how to activate previous lives and future lives and how to activate those gifts and lessons. But really, sorry, I'm going to shut the door here. But really, but learning how to use your natural abilities and your natural gifts to the world. And so once I understood my natural born quadrant, I understood my gifts that I'm here to offer the world and the lessons. And again, it doesn't mean I just happen to have a career and a business doing this, but you don't have to, as long as you're finding ways to still offer your gifts to the world and work within your lessons. And once you can do that within your own life, that's really where the fun begins, because then as we go deeper into the quadrant theory, we learn how to start unlocking previous life's gifts and how to bring those forth into this life. This was one of the biggest impacts that it had on the relationship with my husband and I and my daughter. This was massive for me to understand, because after this meditation, after I understood, which by the way, you've been looking at the screen, this tells you what your natural born quadrant is. So your natural born quadrant is your sun sign that's associated with the element of the quadrant. So quadrant 1's element is the earth element. So all of the sun signs that are associated with earth are a natural born quadrant 1. Same goes for 2, 3, and 4. So you can see right here, your natural born sun sign, that is your natural born quadrant. So if you're natural born air sign, Aquarius, Gemini, or Libra, you're natural born quadrant 4, which means your gifts exist in quadrant 4 and your lessons exist in quadrant 2. So you can see from this, sorry, my dog likes to come in and out. He's worse than a child. So you can see from right here, your gifts and your lessons, right? So if you are natural born quadrant 1, that's your gifts, your lessons going to be in quadrant 3 and vice versa. So to help you understand what some of the gifts may be, Quadrant 1, the gifts of Quadrant 1 would be leadership, stability, financial success, creation of the material, problem solver, courage, resilience, critical thinking, disruptor to improve systems. It's the rebel and the Jungian archetype, hard worker, ambitious. Quadrant 2 is empathy, protection of others, psychic abilities, intuition, caregiving, emotional, groundedness, creative, sensitive, artistic. Quadrant 3 would be fiery, passionate, adventurous, playful, charismatic, free-spirited, loving, community-oriented, ability to surrender, very adaptable and flexible. And then some of the Quadrant 4 gifts would be unity, consciousness, wisdom, a transformer of realities, creation of the mental, leadership, innovations, tech advances is really big, compassion, discernment, free-spirited, and eccentric. So those go over the gifts that you have from each of those quadrants. And some of them, depending on what lifetime you're in, are going to resonate more than others, right? Because if you come in this lifetime as a Leo, but the next lifetime as an Aries, you're going to have different gifts for each of those lives. So you can see these two polarities, like I talked about, as they taught me. It's these quadrants exist on two poles. We have two separate poles. So Quadrant 1 and 3 are connected, and Quadrant 4 and 2 are connected. So you can think of this pole of 1 and 3 as sort of the realm of action and manifestation. So if you're wanting to work on manifestation in your life, you're going to want to work on the pole of Quadrant 1 and Quadrant 3. And then Quadrant 4 and 2 is more like spiritual enlightenment, inner child healing. So if you're wanting to work on that, you're going to work on that pole. These areas, these quadrants affect these specific areas of your life. So Quadrant 1, it's going to be your personal power. Like I said, courage, leadership, wealth. Quadrant 3 is going to be more about your physical health, your ability to play, your sense of community. Quadrant 4 is going to be about your spiritual connection and your sovereignty as a soul, as a separate soul. And then on the opposite end of that, Quadrant 2 is your relationships. And then really what we dive into is how to activate all of them using the pineal gland. So why this affected the relationship with my husband. So I'm going to share a quick little story with you. So when we started our company, helping people back in 2018 is when we first created the company. We were both pretty passionate about helping people. My husband at the time owned a construction company, commercial construction company. He had owned that for 30 years. He started it when he was 19 years old. He said he always knew from a young kid, he loved building. He loved putting things together. He loves the material world. And so when we started our company helping other people, he was doing both of those things. Well, a couple of years ago, after going, through a pretty long divorce and such, he sold that company. And as we were growing our business of helping others, there were so many people that said to him, like, you're so wise, you need to be doing this full time. I said that to him. You need to be doing this full time. You need to be out there, sharing your wisdom and helping people. You need to get out of the construction industry, because in many ways it was very tough on him. And so when he sold it, he went through about a 2-year period of some really dark nights of the soul, because he lost a very big portion of his identity. And in my spiritual ego, my imbalance of Quadrant 4, I did not know how to support him very well in that, because my lesson is in Quadrant 2, which is emotional and connection and empathy. And I was very much like, get up, get going, you know how to do this, so, and I didn't quite understand why he was having such a hard time, because he had this other business that we had created and we could do together. And in my spiritual ego, I thought, well, helping people is the best thing and of the highest thing and the most important thing. And it sort of created, we're able to work through things. We don't really fight or anything like that, but it did create some friction in that I didn't understand how he couldn't just use the tools that we had and get up and get through it. And he didn't understand how I couldn't just support him and be there for him. And so when the Quadrant Theory was presented to us and kept evolving, as I said, through these very deep meditative states, and then through us talking and building a model from those, what we came to understand that was profound was he is a natural born Quadrant 1, which of course makes perfect sense. And we both understood that it comes natural to him to lead, to be an entrepreneur, to be of the material world, to build in the material world. And I was like, oh my gosh, I understand now. And because I've been working in my lesson, which I didn't know was my lesson through that whole time, because I didn't know the quadrant theory, I was able to hold space for him. You know, you can think of quadrant 2 as shamans. They're really, because they've gone through their own darkness, they're able to hold loving space for people. And that's what leads me to my daughter. My daughter is a natural born quadrant 2. But before I dive into that, I want to wrap that aspect of it up. Now we understood, oh my gosh, me as a natural born quadrant 4, and I can take, I'm of the mental plane, so I can take ideas and then bring them down into like courses. It's a gift of mine. Not everybody can do that, and bring them down into something tangible. He's of the mental plane, so he has ideas, but he wants to work with his hands because natural born quadrant 1 is of the material world. So he always struggled with that. He's like, I have a hard time seeing it because he couldn't actually feel it with his hands, right? It's like online course, it's online, it's, you know, out there, and he couldn't touch it and grasp it. And for him, that's absolutely necessary for him to feel in alignment, for him to feel on purpose. And because we discovered this, he is now able, he's starting a new construction company, but he is approaching it and entering it from such a different frame of mind, as opposed to starting it from only his quadrant 1 and 2, as he did in the past. He's now able to bring in his quadrant 3 and 4 and infuse this new business with a totally different energy and perspective, while still being able to work on his passions, which is building things. And so for us, it was like, oh my gosh, I understand you, you understand me. And now I can have compassion and understanding for what we're both doing. Now, here's the other aspect of how this totally deepened our relationship. If you are in the shadow of quadrant 2, you're going to be in your inner wounded child. You're going to be that victim because you're in the frame of reference of that inner child. And so if a couple is trying to work through a problem, but they're both activated in their quadrant 2, there is absolutely no way that they will be able to solve the issue, because they're both within their wounded child perspective, literally in their brain. In order to resolve conflict and be able to communicate, one has to be activated in their 3 or 4, in the right side of the brain, because they have to be able to see it from a zoomed out perspective. When we're in our inner child, we're in a narrow, like objective focus, meaning you did this to me, right? Because that's what a child would think. You did this to me, you caused me pain, and you're not understanding. So if we're both in that space of quadrant 2, we can't communicate. We can't solve issues. We can't work through something because we're both activated in our inner child. The only way we can do that is to sort of zoom out and see a larger perspective. So if I'm activated in my 4, I can have compassion for him and understanding without taking it personally, right? Or let's say, you know, a lot of the things that we had to work through too was like when he was going through that 2 years of dark night of the soul, I was super quadrant 1. And so I'm like, do, go. And I didn't understand his rest and recovery phase. I didn't understand he was in quadrant 2, and that it was absolutely a necessary part of his growth and evolution. And so from understanding that, he can then go, oh, she's in her quadrant 1, she's getting shit done. Or I can go, oh, he's in his quadrant 3, he's wanting to play. Or, oh, she or he is feeling very connected. And so you can navigate your relationship with a framework and an understanding, instead of blame, instead of fighting, instead of arguing, instead of I need you to do this for me, I need you to be this way, you're not this way, why can't he change? You really start to understand, oh, I can see that he might be in his quadrant 2, and there's no way that I can work with him or communicate with him if he's there. I just have to hold space for him. I just have to love him and see from a higher perspective and not be triggered in my own stuff. You had to work through your own stuff in order to be able to do this. We both had to work through our quadrant 2 stuff if you're going to come into a conscious relationship, and both parties have to be willing to use this framework as a sort of model to navigate your relationship. So that was fundamentally 2 ways how so much shifted in our lives. And like I said, we were able to connect from an even deeper level because I was able to understand him better, and he was able to understand me better in ways that we didn't really get, or maybe we thought well, maybe you need to be more like this. And then I went, oh my God, he needs to be doing some sort of building. That's what drives him and makes him feel alive and passionate, because he's in his gifts. And, when we're both in quadrant 3, that's awesome. We're going to go play and have fun. And so you're able to navigate your relationship from such a deeper level of compassion and understanding. And that, like I said, drives me into the relationship with my daughter. And I've always said she's been my biggest teacher. I've known that for a very long time, but until I had the framework of the quadrant theory, I didn't understand how. And now that I knew, okay, my gifts and my purpose is to offer my gifts and to grow and learn of my quadrant 4, but my lesson is in quadrant 2. And of course, the people that I had to do the most work around in my life are all natural born quadrant 2s. My dad, then my ex-husband, and now my daughter, they're all natural born quadrant 2s. So if I look at it in that way, they actually came to me to help me learn my lessons. They didn't come to me to hurt me or to do something to me. They came to me to help me grow. They came to me to offer me my lessons. And so it's another way to look at people that you may struggle with in your life and go, they may be here to help me learn my lesson. And so, the first couple years of my spiritual awakening, my daughter and I have always been extremely close. However, when I first went through my awakening, and she would call me and share with me maybe some issues she's working through with her friend. At that time, they're like 8, 9 years old, and it feels like everything in their world. And she'd be working with something through her friend. Well, because I was like, you need to, not be a victim, and, like all the spiritual self-help crap, sometimes it can become crap. I would like try to force that on her. And what would happen is these intense battles where she is just crying and screaming, and I am frustrated. And, it was like, we just couldn't connect. We connected, but it was like two storms colliding. And I didn't understand how to help her. I thought I was helping her, by trying to give her these tools and techniques as if she was a client of mine or a student of mine. She was just my daughter, right? Which is a totally different relationship than I'm going to have with somebody that's paying me to help them through this. She wasn't paying me to help her through these issues. In fact, what she was asking me was to just be with her in the messiness. And it was so hard for me to understand that, because as a masculine tendency that wants to solve problems, what she was trying to teach me is the feminine aspect, which is a circle, which is just to be in the messiness of life and the messiness of emotions and the messiness of relationships. Because as we all know, relationships can be very messy and very hard to navigate. Now, if I go into my shadow of my quadrant 4, I just avoid relationships. I avoid my quadrant 2. I'm perfectly fine being by myself, so I don't have to deal with that messiness. But what she's been able to bring into my life, because quadrant 2 is about relationships, is how to just be in them and be okay in the messiness and be okay in the emotion. And what she taught me is that if I could not try to solve anything for her, and I could just let her know that I'm here and that she's not alone, what will happen is those emotions will naturally pass on their own when we're not trying to shove them down, which is what we do as parents, right? Most parents is like, your child's feeling something, either you're trying to solve it right away, or you're telling them they're wrong. Stop crying, stop doing this, you need to do this. It's what we think. We're trying to do what's best, but what we don't understand is we can't meet them where they're at if we don't understand their natural born quadrant and how to support them in that. And this is why it's so profound as a parent. If you can understand your own child's natural born quadrant, you can figure out ways to nurture and support that, as opposed to your child that maybe is a natural born quadrant 3 and is maybe more adventurous and playful, how to support them instead of forcing them into quadrant 1 activities, slowly teaching them quadrant 1 activities, but really being able to nurture and support them in their quadrant. And that's what I was able to do with my daughter, is go, I'm just here for you. And what she also learned from that is that emotions pass. And she's learning from me. We're learning from each other, right? And so now, I just got off the phone with her an hour ago, and she was sharing with me these issues that she's having with her boyfriend. And what we were able to do is, work through them, but not as like, you need to do this or you should be doing this. It was just explaining to her the quadrant theory and understanding what we do and our childhood wounds. And, she gets it. She understands it because she knows I'm there to support her now. Like, I'm not trying to change her or make her do something else. I'm just there to be there with her. And that's all our loved ones really want, is just to go, I'm here for you. Now, that's not to say that if you have a totally dysfunctional relationship, or you're with somebody that's just constantly in victimization, it doesn't mean you have to cut them out of your life. It may just mean you have to have limits and boundaries around how much time you spend with them, but you can love them where they're at and accept them where they're at, and still have some boundaries around that relationship. And that's what fundamentally is going to shift. And that's coming from using, quadrant 4, which is compassion, which is not going down there in there with him, but understanding from a higher perspective. Oh, okay, I get it. I see where you're at. I'm not going to wrong you for that, or tell you need to do this or that. I'm just going to be there as much as I can for you. And if that turns into, like I said, something that's dysfunctional or toxic, then of course you need to look at, okay, why do I continue in this relationship? But in the case of my husband and my daughter, there was no part of me that wanted to put boundaries or leave that relationship. I wanted to nurture and deepen that relationship. And if you have loved ones in your life that you desire to deepen that relationship, you desire to grow with that person, then this is how you do that, through the quadrant theory framework, understanding their natural born quadrant, what's going to come natural for them, nurturing that, understanding where they're at in any given moment, and being there for them. So with her, I was able to go, oh, okay, if I just hold the space and she's having an issue and I say, you're right, I get why you would be upset. I hear you. I understand you. And I'm holding that space for her from my quadrant 4, but being empathetic in my quadrant 2, she feels safe. And if she feels safe, she can let those emotions that come natural to her. She's going to be an emotional being. I'm going to be more of a mental being. She's going to feel safe to let them move through her and out and not get stuck. And that's really, then she can accept her gifts, right? Then she's not avoiding them because her mom says, you need to become this enlightened person, right? Her mom says, no, you're perfect the way you are. And let's just learn how to navigate this better. And that's what I did with her. And then ultimately how it all came around to discovering the relationship with myself, because as I said, we're going to treat those around us the same way that we're treating ourselves. What the quadrant theory helped me do is really create this very deep compassion for myself. And from compassion came unconditional love, because in the past, if I would go into a quadrant 2, which is where I was feeling tired and restful, I would beat myself up. Or if I started to have negative thoughts or whatever else, I would really beat myself up. And I would try to parent that little inner child in me, not in a loving way, but in a very hard and strict way. Because I didn't understand the cycles. I didn't understand the seasons. I didn't understand that this was actually natural and normal for me to go to these places. And once I understood that and I could really embody each of these quadrants, I no longer was beating myself up for being in any of them. Even if I went into the shadow, there was no more discipline, self-hatred, angry at myself, resentful at myself. It was just, oh, I understand. I'm in my quadrant 2. I'm in my quadrant 4. I get it. And if I'm in the shadow, now I know what that looks like. And I know what to do if I'm there for too long. I have an actual map and tools and resources to help me not stay there, but not through you're bad, through a total and complete unconditional love of the self, a total and complete acceptance that this is actually, you don't have to believe in the woo-woo. This is the biology of our brain. This is the chemistry makeup of our brain, and that it's actually completely natural and normal to move through these cycles, just like we have 4 seasons, just like we have 4 elements to create our entire material world. So too do we have these elements literally in our brain. And so too do we need to use and utilize all 4 of these elements in our brain. And when you understand that, you no longer will beat yourself up. It just dissipates, because you go, wow, I see that all of these are important, and that I have to nurture and love myself through that process. And that is how fundamentally learning about this, understanding it, implement it, has shifted all 3 of those relationships from a very deep level. And like I said, I wouldn't be able to be as compassionate and understanding and empathetic to my husband, to my daughter, if I hadn't been able to do that also with myself. But through this model, I could see that and I could understand it. And so I share all that with you guys. Like I said, it's just the tip of the iceberg. So that means if this resonated with you and you want to dive deeper, you want to start understanding the quadrant theory at a deeper level, this is the process that we take people through. These are some slides because I'm going way long on time. I'm just going to tell you that I did some research on trying to accomplish a goal by yourself, and then as opposed to doing it with a community or a coach or a mentor and a guide. And basically what these stats showed us is that if you're trying to do something by yourself, so you may have saw this and you're like, okay, I'm going to go try it myself. You only have a success rate of about 10% because you have to have extremely high motivation and extremely high self-discipline, which most of us don't have. If you have those two things, you can be successful. But they found if you just work with others, a community, a guide, a mentor, your success rates go up to 65 to 95%. I know this to be true because we've led, group mentorships, courses, classes, online courses for 6 years now. So I know this to be true, but it was very interesting to see the actual statistics on the research that they did. But, they've done this with smoking cessation programs, weight loss programs, getting into shape, all of those things. They saw it was the same every single time. If they had an accountability partner, if they had a community, if they had a framework, if they had a mentor, a coach, or a guide, it increased their chances of success, which is why we do what we do. It's why we offer this really immersive class. Excuse me. So what we cover it's a 12 module immersive class, but it's lifetime access. So we have weekly coaching calls every single week. You watch the modules on your own, but you have a lifetime to do it. So even though there's 12 modules, it may take you 2 years. It may take you 12 weeks. It takes you however long it takes you, but we give you the sort of support necessary so that you can work your way through that. So module 1, I help you understand those different modalities that we use. Module 2, we dive deep into quadrant 2. Module 3, quadrant 1. Module 5, quadrant 4, module 6, we put together the maps and how to really make sure that you can understand your own personal maps. Module 7, we dive even deeper into the natural born quadrants, gifts and lessons. Module 8, we dive into the activation of all 4. Module 9, mastering all areas of your life. Module 10, we dive deep into the esoteric traditions and how they are mapped within the quadrant theory. Module 11, how to tap into the moon cycles, because the moon moves through the different quadrants of the brain, actually the collective brain, and how to tap into those energies to tap into the different quadrants of your brain. And then micro to macro is in the last module. So you get the 12-week online course, but as I said, it's lifetime access. So you get access to weekly group mentorship calls. We also do a monthly study group session so that you have a defined space and time to come in and work on your maps or work on some material in the group with other people who are in the class. We also have a private Facebook group, private Art of Looking In community. We do our own private Telegram chat specifically for the Quadrant Theory Immersive. And then you also get access, anyone who buys any products from us get access to a free community call once a month. We do these once a month with our community for anyone that has purchased any products with us. And then you also get our 2 self-paced online courses. One is helping you learn the foundations and fundamentals of breathwork and meditation. The other one's helping you work within Quadrant 2 and really heal that inner child and transcend your triggers. You get a workbook to work all the way through it. Like I said, you get lifetime access. And so we're willing to put our money where our mouth is. If you show up and do every single aspect of the course and you don't find, that your life has been changed and you don't see results, we'll give your money back to you. So you really have nothing to lose. So here's some case studies. Like I said, I'm going through this very quickly now. So these are some people that went through our Quadrant Theory our first sort of experimental group. They only did 12 weeks. We've transformed it now so you have lifetime access. Chrissy says, I'm so hopeful with this new perspective, grateful for the encouragement. I feel relief that I get it, that all the love I need is inside and outside. I feel peace, even though I know there's more work. Thank you. Thank you. Luna says, I love learning about the quadrants where my innate self was born when I was little, and that she was born a quadrant 3, but became quadrant 1. Making the connection was an eye-opener. Lisa said the strategies to get back into balance were the most helpful. One specific result was clarity about the things she wants to work on even more deeper moving forward. Shelley said, I loved getting to be part of the group each week's clear, well organized. The aspect that helped me the most was getting an in-depth understanding of what quadrant is natural to those around me. Again, just like I talked about, to have a better understanding and improve the relationships. So if that resonates with you and you want to go deeper and you want to improve your life, this is going to affect every single area of your life. So your wealth, as I talked about, your personal power, your courage, your inner child, your healing, your recovery, your playfulness, your spiritual connection. It's gonna affect every single area of your life. And it goes from, like I said, you can take it at the very, sort of light level all the way down to some really deep esoteric wisdom that we dive into. And so the first call officially starts next Wednesday. Because it's an ongoing process, you can sign up at any time, but we do start the first class the first call this next Wednesday. So the best thing you can do if you want to join is to set up a call, because we go through an application process. And so if this, like I said, resonates with you, all you have to do is email me, m@theartoflookingin.com. If you email me, we can set up a time to hop on a quick phone call, go over all the details, and make sure that it's a good fit for both parties involved. Obviously, I've been doing this long enough to know that some people just are not a fit for me, and I'm not a fit for some people. So I want to make sure that we are a fit for each other if we're going to be involved in each other's lives and energy for the next, foreseeable future. Like I said, once you have access to this class, you have lifetime access. So you may go 2 years down the road and decide to hop on a call. And so I want to make sure that if we're both putting that much energy and time into each other, that we're a good fit. So email me. We can set up a time to go over all of that. And I can share any more questions or any more information that you may have. So there you go. Wrapped it up way longer than I had planned. I was wanting to do like 45 minutes. I usually go longer because I am obsessed with the Quadrant Theory. I'm obsessed with sharing about it. I'm obsessed with teaching people how it can fundamentally shift your life and every aspect of your life. And it goes as light as you want to go and as deep. My really deep sort of passion right now personally is really diving into, like I said, some very deep ancient tradition and wisdom, ancient, and how to start utilizing that very ancient esoteric wisdom so that we can really become the master of our reality, so that we can become the conscious creator of this video game, so that we can learn how to utilize the gifts from our previous lives and speed up our soul cycles. And that is really where I'm going recently. And towards the end of the immersive class, like I said, in the modules, that's where I take you for those that are ready for that. You may do the first part of the class, it may take you a year, and then the second part of the class another year. But like I said, you make one payment and then you're in there for a lifetime, and you really have nothing to lose, because if you don't get results in your life, you get your money back. So if that resonates with you and you want to dive in, then please email me, m@theartoflookingin, and we'll set up a call and we'll go over all the details. Hopefully that was helpful for you guys. Let me know in the comments if it resonated. Let me know what part resonated. Let me know what natural born quadrant you are, and if it helps you to maybe see and understand the loved ones in your life a little bit more. I love you all. You can reach out anytime if you want more information. Until next time, see you guys.